testimony. And I want to take some time to give you mine, to talk about how I got here, how I got to this point. Because I think it's just really important to say that, hey, I understand this forgiveness issue. In January of 2009, I discovered that my wife at the time of 10 years was involved in an affair. And when I found out about that affair, it had been going on for 11 months. Like I said, we were married for 10 years. We had 3 kids, and I very much wanted my marriage to work. So continued to try to make it work. Eventually, about 2.5 months after that, she decided to leave. She left myself, she left the 3, she left our kids to be with the man that she was with, and that was that. Well, I tell you, my immediate reaction was, God get her. It was. I was, the emotions I felt were many. I was mad. I was sad. I felt betrayed. I was bitter. I was everything at once. And I tell you, I haven't hurt that much before nor since. It was hard. It was really hard to deal with. And so I said, God get her, and God get her now. That's what I want. But I tell you, it was really, really difficult to deal with. And I was struggling with this forgiveness thing. And I was thinking, after a while, I thought, I need to forgive her, but God, you don't know, she really did me wrong. So I was really upset about that. And I tell you, it was this verse, Matthew 5:44, God just kind of put it in my head. It says, but I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them, which despitefully use you and persecute you. And I tell you, for me, it was the last part of that verse. It said, pray for them. And I literally, out loud, said, I don't want to. I said that. One of the things I learned during that time, especially that 2.5 month period of time where I was trying to make it work, and she would lie and I would catch her, and she would lie and I would catch her, and she would lie and I would catch her. I learned that I could say anything to God because He already knows anyway. Now when you read through the Psalms, you see David angry sometimes. And he says some things to God's like, really, you talk to God that way? Well, I tell you, I learned, hey, if David can talk to God that way, I can talk to God that way. And since He knows anyway, what's the problem? He's going to be there to comfort me. So I said, I don't want to. Eventually, I decided, you know what? This is something that God wants me to do. And regardless of if I want to or not, that's irrelevant. The issue is my obedience. Is doing what God would have me to do. So I chose to do it. And I tell you, the first time I prayed, I did not want to do it. I did it specifically, solely, and only because the Bible told me to, and I just did it. But I tell you, what happened as I continued to pray for her is I started to see her differently. My mind began to change. And instead of being angry and bitter and upset, I began to feel sorry for her. Let me tell you a little bit more of kind of what happened here. When she left, she lost a considerable amount. She lost her home. She lost time with her kids. She lost her church family, because when she decided to leave, one of the things that we have at my church, across the street from my church, we have some ball fields where kids will play baseball, softball. They have practices there, all those different kinds of things. And our kids were playing baseball. And so it was 2 weeks from the day that she left. She showed up there with him, arm in arm, together. Now, no one in our church, maybe just a handful of people in our church, knew what was going on. Now, all these people from our church are there, and they see her and this guy and me alone over here, and a lot of questions were asked, and a lot of people were angry, and a lot of people were upset. So after that, Pastor told her, you need to stay away. If you're gonna bring it out like this. You just need to stay away. She lost her church family. Her mother was incensed, was just furious and very sad with the whole thing, because at that point in time, I had been a part of that family for about 16 years. We were married for almost 11, but 16 years we were together. And so her mother said to me, I'll never forget this, she said to me, Brian, you are more welcome in my house right now than she is. I thought, for a mother to say that about her daughter. She lost her physical family. And so I began to see all these things, and I saw it all in different light, and I thought, well, I'm feeling sorry for you now. And so I started with prayer. I started with praying for her. Let me say a couple of things, and before we move on. And one thing about forgiveness, I think, is a big issue that will prevent people from forgiving. One, I think people don't want to forgive because the forgiveness, the thing they have to forgive someone about, is too big. It's too big. You don't know what she did to me. You don't know what he did to me. I can't forgive that. Do you know what she did to me? I tell you, I know. But sometimes, and I know sometimes it's hard, and I think sometimes we expect forgiveness to happen like that. And it doesn't. Not always. And I'll be honest, I bet God doesn't necessarily expect it to happen that way, because sometimes the process is part of what God wants to do in your life. And seeing how he works little by little to get rid of that bitterness and to put forgiveness in. It was a process for me. But I also want to say this. It started with obedience. It started with obedience. Let me say this to you all as well. Sometimes some of you may have an issue with forgiveness with somebody, and you think, I don't want to forgive them. I don't want to pray for them. I don't want to do that. But let me say this. If you just begin with obedience, just doing what God told you to do because he told you to do it, you will be surprised at how he might change the way you think. Amen. Change the way you see that individual. Change the way you see that whole situation. So do that. Be obedient. Just do it because God said to do it, and watch what God will do with your life. Hallelujah. And watch what God will do with your mind, how he'll change your mind. So I did that, and forgiveness started with me praying for her. That's where it started. So she left in 2009. My mom came to me in 2011 and asked if I would be a part of this ministry. I'll never forget that either. And I told her, I said, well, Mom, I'd love to, but my schedule just won't allow it. Couldn't do it. Actually, 2010. So my schedule just won't allow it. And so she was like, well, I understand. And she kind of left it alone. I look back at that now, and in 2010, about spring 2010, the forgiveness was not there. Not in my life. It wasn't. I still would look at her and I was struggling. That's real. I was struggling. That's real. So she, about a year went by, and it was 2011, and she said, Brian, we really would love you to be a part of this ministry, just because you're a teacher, and it would just work really well. And when she asked me that second time, my schedule opened up. It was good, and I was available. I said, yes, let's do it. Let me tell you what happened just 2 weeks before she asked me that second time. Our oldest son had done something in school. He got in trouble. That boy. He's 12 years old now. He got in trouble, and it was something that we wanted to talk to him about together. So I invited her over to the house, so we could just talk to him together. When we were done, he went back down to his room, and I looked at her, and I was just kind of taking inventory of my feelings. I was looking at her. This is 2 years after she left, and I was just looking, and I thought, I'm not angry, I'm not bitter, I'm not upset. And I thought, let me test this. I looked at her, she was on her way out the door, and I stopped her and I said, can I hug you? Now this was huge, because let me tell you, in 2 years, I hadn't touched her in any way, shape, or form. We had been together at certain events, and if she was walking close to me, I made sure I got way out of the way so she wouldn't accidentally brush up against me because I didn't want her touching me and I didn't want to touch her. I mean, literally in 2 years, I hadn't touched her. And so to go from that to say, can I hug you? She looked at me like, what is wrong with you? She did. And she said, yes. And so I walked up to her and I gave her a hug. And once again, I'm thinking to myself, how do I feel? There was nothing. There was nothing there. And I backed away. I looked at her and I said, that wasn't for you. That was for me. That happened 2 weeks before my mom asked me that second time, will you be a part? And miraculously, my schedule was open. I don't think that was an accident.
No.
I really don't. I really don't. But once again, it started, if I can get this to you tonight, we'll talk about some medical stuff too. It started with obedience to God, doing what He told me to do.
Yes, yes.
And not worrying about what I saw, what I thought, oh, this is impossible, I can't do this. No, God said pray for her. I said, okay. Finally, I said, okay. I did it, and the process began. This process. All right.